Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping powwowing at the Beijing Olympics, announcing a partnership of sorts against the U.S. and Western nations. This, as sources say, Russia has 70% of its troops in place for a full invasion of Ukraine. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis joins me now. Colonel, good to see you. Thanks for being here. You know, back during the Cold War, and I remember those days, we worried about an alliance between the old Soviet Union and Mao's China. They never really pulled it off. In fact, they had some skirmishes between the countries. But are they moving in the direction of a real alliance now?
Yeah, actually back then, I'm just I guess as old as you are, and I remember we actually spent time courting China to prevent that very thing, to get them on our side and sideline the Soviet Union. But now it's working in the opposite direction, and they absolutely are moving closer and closer together. And look, we got to be honest and admit that at least a portion of this reason is because we keep pressing both China and Russia on their most important issues, and just keep on pushing sanctions, and on their issues on their borders, which we don't agree with anything that they're saying, but they hold to be core issues. And now that they're finding common cause against us, and it's something we have to pay a lot of attention to, or we could find ourselves in a lot of trouble.
Well, they're both expansionists. They both want to. Russia wants to get back what it lost at the end of the Cold War, and China wants to move in on Taiwan and other places. The question is whether a Russian invasion, which does seem like it's going to happen very soon, whether that will provide some sort of cover for China to go into Taiwan. Do you think that might happen?
You certainly can't discount that, because at the same time the whole world has been focused on the Russia-Ukraine situation. China has continued to make military provocations like they did last year, with lots of overflights, or not overflights, but flights very near the airspace of Taiwan. Direct warnings from high-ranking government officials that the U.S. risks war with China over the Taiwan issue. And look, it just, from a military perspective, if one side or the other goes, it makes a lot of sense for the other side to say, hey, this is our motion. So it is definitely a legitimate possibility.
Well, we're hearing some estimates about the cost to Putin and the cost to the world in terms of casualty figures now from some of our Russia watchers if they have a full invasion of Ukraine. And now they're thinking, he may feel free to go all the way to Kiev, to the capital, and just take over the whole thing. 5,000 to 25,000 Ukrainian troops killed or wounded, 4,000 Russian troops killed, an estimated 25 to 50,000 civilian casualties, along with 1 to 5 million possible refugees in Europe. I know Europe doesn't like those figures. What about Russia? Putin, as callous an individual as he is, he might face some pushback from the Russian people if casualties mount on the Russian side.
Man, I mean, that's certainly a possibility, although I frankly think those are very low numbers. I think the numbers in actual war are very low, because I think that the killing power and the striking power is so much higher than anything that we've seen in an actual war in decades, is much worse than anybody thinks. But I tell you, the focus for us should not be on their casualties, but on the potential cost to us. And that's why, look, no matter what we want to say, Russia appears poised to strike here, and the one way we could probably deter them is not with sanctions or anything else, but with saying, hey, we're just going to take Ukraine membership of NATO off the table for now. We're going to put a moratorium on it, because it is not in our interest to have Ukraine in NATO. And if that can prevent a war, that is 10 times better than holding a tough position and then having Ukraine invaded. That helps no one. And I think we need to give serious consideration to that.
Well, speaking about our role in all this, a lot of military families, including my own, by the way, get very nervous, particularly after Afghanistan, at looking at troop movements and moving our own troops closer to where the fire is about to begin. Is there any danger of U.S. troops being drawn into all this?
Well, there's an absolute danger. That's one of the things I've been arguing about, that we're sending over 3,000 troops up closer to the border, and frankly, these are light infantry troops of the 82nd Airborne and a Stryker brigade, and those are the lightest skinned vehicles. Even if you fought, I mean, you're talking Russia has high mechanized forces that are very well trained, and lots of them, and we wouldn't stand any chance. So, but the fact that you're moving them closer, but you probably have no intent to use them, God forbid that the president should actually send presidents into an armored fight, all you do is raise the chance of miscalculation and error actually causing a war. So this is not a good move, and it doesn't deter Putin, and it doesn't help us.
Colonel, very quickly, we only got 20 seconds. I don't want to scare anybody, but Putin's supposedly also shifted some nuclear exercises
I don't want to scare anybody.
February
This is so
from what was
bullshit.
supposed to happen in the coming fall. Should that be of a concern to us?
It always is, and that's one of the main things I've been warning about for months now, is the possibility that if anything goes sideways, the nuclear escalation is definitely there and on the table, and this just highlights it.
Dangerous times. Colonel Danny Davis, good to see you, sir. Thank you for being here.
Let's see what this dipshit got to say.
That would be unconstitutional because the Constitution, Article 6, specifically provides that no religious test shall ever be required. I think the 14th and 19th Amendments also extend that to no racial or gender tests. Nobody should ever be excluded because they don't fit a racial or gender criteria. There are enormous numbers of qualified black judges and professors who would make great appointees to the Supreme Court.
Well, that was legal scholar Alan Dershowitz with me last weekend, right here on this program, calling Joe Biden's criteria for a Supreme Court justice unconstitutional. Biden, who has vowed to nominate a black woman as Justice Stephen Breyer's replacement, will reportedly announce his pick by the end of the month. Joining me right now is Senator Ted Cruz. He sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which will get Biden's nominee first before running for office. He was a Supreme Court litigant and clerk for former Chief Justice William Rehnquist. Senator, good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Good to be with you.
What are you expecting out of President Biden for his SCOTUS pick?
Well, let me say at the outset, the fact that he's chose to put out this racial quota, it is wrong. It is wrong to discriminate based on race. If you or I tried to do what Joe Biden has done, if your show put up an ad in the paper, your morning show is looking for a producer and only black women are eligible to apply, or for that matter, you put up an ad that said only white men are eligible to apply, or you put up an ad that said only Native American women are eligible to apply, any of those ads would be illegal. They would violate the federal civil rights law, and you or I would face liability. And yet, Joe Biden, those laws don't technically apply to the president in this appointment, but he is certainly violating the spirit of non-discrimination. If he wanted to search for qualified applicants and find who he thought was the most qualified nominee, and she happened to be an African-American woman, that's wonderful. But he's not doing that. He wants to discriminate based on race. And Maria, it's also worth noting there's some irony to this because Joe Biden broke a threshold because Joe Biden not once but twice has actually filibustered a black woman to try to stop her from becoming a federal judge. That was Janice Rogers Brown. George W. Bush nominated her to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and Joe Biden, along with Chuck Schumer, along with Dick Durbin, they filibustered her. They tried to block her from becoming a judge, not because she was a black woman, but because, God forbid, she actually believed in the Constitution and would follow the terms of the Constitution. What Biden really wants here is a left-wing ideal, but he also wants to discriminate based on race because the modern Democratic Party supports quotas and they support racial discrimination.
Wow, you make a lot of really good points, Senator. So do you think he's going to nominate an activist, and are you a no vote?
Well, I have to see who the nominee is before I decide who to vote, but I will say this. If Biden nominates a judge in the same mold as the nominees he's put forward for this past year, you know, it's been stunning. I sit on the Judiciary Committee. I've seen every one of these nominees. Biden consistently has chosen hard left activists, political activists, brazenly. One of the nominees recently described himself as a wild-eyed left-wing activist. Those were his own terms. That nominee described the hatred he has for conservatives. That again was his own terms. The nominees Joe Biden has put forth for the bench are more radical than any judicial nominees in our nation's history. They're far more radical than Obama's were. They're more radical than Clinton's were. They're more radical than Jimmy Carter's were. And the nominees that Biden is putting forward are nominees that he believes will undermine our rights, will undermine free speech, will undermine religious liberty, will undermine the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
As you know, last year I wrote a book called One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. And in that book, One Vote Away, I go through in each chapter our fundamental rights, the rights we cherish, and how landmark case after landmark case was decided 5-4, that a single seat has the power to tip the balance and take away our rights. And sadly, that's what Joe Biden and the Democrats want.
Yeah, well, that was very educational, that book. I want to ask you about this balance of power, because the Democrats act like they have this enormous mandate. And yet it's 50-50 Senate. And yet this last 2 weeks, unfortunately, Democrat Senator Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico suffered a stroke. We wish him the best. He's leaving his party one vote short of the majority, however. What does that mean for the SCOTUS vote if he literally cannot be there physically because of the stroke?
Well, look, I certainly hope Ben Ray recovers and recovers quickly. Heidi's and my prayers are with him, and it's frightening. He was a young, healthy man, and yet any one of us, we don't know that we will be here tomorrow. I do think the fact that he may be gone for some period of time, it illustrates the point you just made, which is how incredibly precarious this majority is. This 50-50 majority is the narrowest mathematical majority possible. If the Democrats actually paid attention to the voters, they would recognize that they don't have a mandate for a radical far-left socialist government. They don't have a mandate for adopting the policies of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC, that a 50-50 Senate would call for some reasonableness and moderation. Unfortunately, that's not what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done. They've gone hard left, and they're behaving as if they have a 65-35 Senate. And listen, if they nominate a zealot, I hope we see Republicans stand together.
I don't see anybody standing up to it all.
And vote against
No
confirming
Republicans
that zealot.
standing up to any of
If,
it.
on the other hand, they
They're
nominate a
pretending
principled
to.
constitutionalist, I would be happy to vote for that judge. But I'll confess, based on the past year and the people Joe Biden's already put forward, I have very little optimism on that front.
Nah, everybody's going
Senator,
along with
gotta
it.
switch gears to talk about big tech censorship and your efforts to stop what's going on for the truckers. There's been censorship of their convoy in Canada, and also Facebook has removed their page for
Wow.
a DC rally. These truckers raised money in a GoFundMe
Wow, it's all
situation,
coming
and
down.
the GoFundMe officials said, well, you want to protest a vaccine? We're going to seize your $10 million that you raised. Can you imagine? People donate to GoFundMe because they are donating to a certain cause. GoFundMe thought nothing of saying we're going to seize the $10 million.
These are all this is a Mineral Street day. They were laying out the Mineral Streets. These are Mineral Streets that I've opened up. You can look around, take a camera in your hand, look at your screen using the camera like I'm showing you how to do. Anybody that's really interested in knowing what the fuck is going on, really know what's going on instead of watching the news all the time, because this is unbelievable. All the shit that I've been talking about throughout this series, as I'm playing the news, is all coming about. It's pretty amazing.
And give it to the charities.
It should
that
be
we want to give
obvious
it to
by now.
Until they
What I'm
have to
telling you
backtrack.
is the
What are
way
you
it's
gonna do
fucking
about
going.
it?
And it's not me. I'm not
Well, listen,
no
it
genius.
is theft on the part
It's,
of GoFundMe. Let me
it's
say
just
the
been
Canadian
told to us,
truckers
you know.
are
I was
heroes.
just
They are patriots, and they are marching
listening.
for your freedom and for my freedom. They are those truck drivers. That God bless them. They're defending Canada, but they're defending America as well. That is courage on display. That the government doesn't have the right to force you to comply to their arbitrary mandates, and they're standing up for freedom. And of course, big government hates it and is trying to crush them. Of course, the corporate media hates it and is trying to silence them. And big tech, you look at what GoFundMe did. People gave $10 million to support the Freedom Convoy because they were so proud of the courage of these truck drivers. And the thieves in Silicon Valley decided, we don't like your politics, so A, we're going to take your money, and then B, we're going to give it to people we like. Listen, if anyone else did that, that is called theft. And so today, I sent a letter to the Federal Trade Commission asking that the FTC open an investigation into GoFundMe into whether they've committed deceptive trade practices, because when people gave money, they gave money under the promise it would go to the Freedom Convoy, not to whatever left-wing political ideology GoFundMe and other Silicon Valley companies support. They are deceiving consumers, and it is wrong.
Well, we'll be following this for sure. We will keep on that. Real quick, Senator, before you go, on Ukraine, what is Putin trying to do here? Do you expect him to invade Ukraine?
Look, I think Putin, it is likely he will invade within a month. His objective is to reassemble the old Soviet Union, which would be incredibly dangerous for the United States. And Maria, all of this is happening because Joe Biden has shown Putin weakness and appeasement. He gave away the Nord Stream 2
No, because
pipeline,
America sold
which
away our
authored
country over the
bipartisan
last
sanctions
100
that stopped
years
Nord Stream 2,
as
that
part of the
prevented
plan. It was
Ukraine
all part of the
invasion.
plan.
And Joe Biden capitulated.
China
He has
already
capitulated
owns
to enemies across the globe.
more than
He
half of the
gave
United States, and
Afghanistan
everybody's
to
going to be in
Taliban. He's trying
denial
to
of
give
it.
Ukraine to Russia, and he's on the way to giving Taiwan to the Chinese communists.
Senator, thanks very
Conspiracy
much for all
talk.
you're doing.
That's
We will see you
conspiracy
soon.
talk.
We appreciate it.
Unbelievable.
Joining us now, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Jake, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Good to have you here today. I'd like to start with this. Sources are telling us that Russia is now, quote, 70% ready to launch an invasion in Ukraine because they are now, or will soon be, upwards of 130,000 troops and significant new presence of jets, missiles, anti-aircraft equipment in Russia and in Belarus, north of Ukraine. But the U.S. and Ukraine have sent mixed signals on whether or not they think that an invasion will actually happen. So what can you tell us this morning? Is an invasion imminent?
Well, what I can tell you, Martha, is that we are in the window. Any day now, Russia could take military action against Ukraine, or it could be a couple of weeks from now, or Russia could choose to take the diplomatic path instead. The key thing is that the United States needs to be and is prepared for any of those contingencies in lockstep with our allies and partners. We have reinforced and reassured our allies on the eastern flank. We have united the West. We have provided material support to Ukraine, all of President Biden's direction, and we have also offered Russia a diplomatic path if they choose to take it. If war breaks out, it will come at an enormous human cost to Ukraine, but we believe that based on our preparations and our response, it will come at a strategic cost to Russia as well.
Yes, I mean, that's what we're learning, according to the Chairman of Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley. They're saying that Kiev could fall within 72 hours if there is an invasion, that 50,000 people could be killed. What do you think is the likelihood that there's a surprising quick fall of Kiev?
Look, my job here is not to predict what exactly will happen day to day. It is to prepare for any contingency, including a contingency where Russian forces drive on the Ukrainian capital. We are working hard with our allies and partners on that. We are providing, as I said before, material support to the Ukrainians and trying to get them to make sure they are in the best position possible to defend themselves. So the Russians have a lot of options available to them, but of course, we have options available to us in terms of the swift and severe economic consequences that we can impose, the ways in which we can strengthen and fortify our presence on NATO territory and NATO countries, and of course, the global diplomatic isolation that Russia would face should it choose to proceed.
But I think everyone, it's fresh in everyone's memory, the quicker than expected fall of Kabul.
We just gave them a pipeline to fucking Germany. I mean, it's so
troops, U.S.
shit,
troops that are sent to NATO states, but none sent to Ukraine. I mean, that's a real possibility that we could be sitting here talking in a few weeks and saying, gee, that was faster than we expected, but we don't have anybody in country, and too bad.
The president has been clear for months now that the United States is not sending forces to start a war or fight a war with Russia in Ukraine. We have sent forces to Europe to defend NATO territory. We have a sacred obligation under Article 5 to defend our NATO allies, Poland and Romania and the Baltic states. We have made that commitment to them. We will keep that commitment to them. What we can do for the Ukrainians is not send American troops to fight in a war in Ukraine, but we can send defensive assistance, which we have done to the tune of more than $500 million over the course of the past year. And we can provide other forms of support alongside our allies and partners. We have done that as well. We have been clear from the start about the steps that we are prepared to take, and whatever action Russia undertakes next, the United States is ready.
Is it likely that what comes out of this, the diplomatic angle, is being pursued, obviously. Is it likely that we're going to see an arms treaty, a situation where Russia starts negotiating with us? We've heard there are already talks about moving some of our Tomahawk missiles and a reciprocal move from their side. Is that a likely outcome here? And would it be a scenario where Vladimir Putin could say, gee, I got what I wanted?
Well, we've been very clear, President Biden directly to President Putin, Secretary Blinken in meetings with his counterpart just in the last couple of weeks, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, that we're prepared alongside our allies and partners to negotiate issues of mutual concern when it comes to European security. And yes, that would include reciprocal limitations on the placement of offensive missiles. It would include greater transparency measures. It would include mechanisms to reduce the possibility of mistake or escalation if there are incidents at sea or in the air. We're prepared to do all of that, just as we have been over the course of the past decades in the Cold War and after. If Russia wants to sit at the table and do that, we are prepared to come flanked by allies and partners and negotiate an outcome along those lines. If Russia chooses to go a different path, we're ready for that too.
Why not move more of our troops from Germany? Germany has really been on the sidelines in this. They have large energy deals with Russia. They're not giving any lethal aid to Ukraine. So we have 30 to 50,000 troops in Germany. I think a lot of people look at this situation and they remember some of the proposals in the prior administration and say, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we moving those troops to NATO, to our stronger allies than Germany at this moment?
Well, first of all, we have been coordinating closely with Germany in advance of the Chancellor's visit to Washington tomorrow on a swift and severe package of sanctions that the United States and Europe would both impose on Russia in the event of an invasion of Ukraine. And Germany has been working with us on that. Second, while it's true that Germany has not sent arms to Ukraine after the United States, they are the second largest donor to Ukraine in Europe. The great thing, Martha, about having the kind of alliance...
It's always cool to see different hairdos like this. Like there's a mohawk on this one right here. Eye, nose, mouth down here. And there's his mohawk right here.
Weapons. And then there are other allies who are providing different forms of support to Ukraine. But the bottom line is this. The reason that we are able to swiftly...
Could probably get a nationality out of the facial features too.
And reassure our ally Romania is because those forces were stationed in Germany. Having forces stationed in Germany is in fact a strategic asset to the United States because not only can they help defend German territory, but they can be moved to our allies in the east to reinforce, reassure, and deter Russia. And that puts the United States in a stronger position to stand up to Russian military aggression.
I know you've said that, the larger goal is that the United States and our allies are stronger on the world stage and that Russia and, of course, China as well are weaker on the world stage. But how did it serve that goal to remove opposition to Nord Stream 2? Because now we're in a position where we're hoping that maybe it can be turned off if an invasion happens. But if we had held fast in opposition to Nord Stream 2, wouldn't we have denied Vladimir Putin some of the leverage that he now clearly has?
Nord Stream 2 is leverage for us, not leverage for Vladimir Putin. You said turn off Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2 hasn't been turned on.
Right,
there is no
but it's going
gas
to be
flowing through Nord Stream 2 right now.
Yeah, because Germany told them to wait.
In part because of the diplomacy of the United States.
No,
and we have been absolutely clear that if Russia invades Ukraine, one way or the other, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward. That's leverage for us that we have right now. So we intend to use that leverage, and Vladimir Putin has a choice to make. If he chooses to move on Ukraine, he will not be getting the benefits of Nord Stream 2.
And Germany has agreed to that. Germany's agreed that, I know they've given an extension for a few months, but do you really think that Germany will not turn that pipeline on if Russia invades?
Exactly.
For the foreseeable future?
Right. They will turn around because they need fuel.
Follow through on the clear and definitive statement we have made as the Biden administration. One way or the other, if Russia invades Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
Why not reopen the Keystone Pipeline and reopen federal leases on U.S. land? Because we had energy independence, and that was a large leverage for the United States over Russia. Now we don't have that anymore. In fact, we now buy more fuel from Russia than we have in the past. So why wouldn't you want to revisit those in order to increase our leverage over Russia?
Well, first, Martha, the United States is still a substantial producer of energy. Second, we have worked
Explain,
with
please.
partners around
Where
the
do you
world
get out saying
to
that?
take steps to ensure that Russia's attempts
Biden
to
shut it
use
all
energy as a
down.
weapon get frustrated. One of the things that President Biden has been very focused on is making sure that if Putin turns down the supply of gas to Europe, that we can find cargoes of liquefied natural gas going elsewhere in the world and redirect them to Europe. So the United States is prepared for a contingency
But
in
you
which
do
Russia
concede that we're no
tries
longer
to
energy independent,
Jesus,
Jake.
guy's fucking bad.
And we were before.
What I would say is that the United States is investing massively in being a leader in an energy transition in which, yes, for now, we continue to use fossil
there
fuels,
you
but
go.
over the course of years and decades,
There you go.
we become a clean energy superpower, because that ultimately is not just where the jobs are. It's
Yeah,
where the
our new
strategic
name will be
advantage
China.
will lie, because we can't just look
That'll
at
be our
next
new
year or
name.
the year after. That's
The
not
China
what China's
States
doing.
of America.
We have to look out 10, 20, 30 years. And over those years, President Biden's investments and his vision for how to make the United States the world's clean energy superpower, that's what's going to put us in the best strategic position alongside democratic, like-minded allies and partners.
Well, I mean, some might say that Russia and China would look at that answer and feel that they're in a pretty good position.
Damn right,
They
laughing
came
their
out
asses off.
and
What a bunch of
said,
zombies.
You know, we have a deep friendship. We have an unshakable alliance now. The two of us are in lockstep. What's the White House reaction to that statement from them on Friday?
Well, first, Martha, they didn't use the word alliance. They used some other phrases, but did not actually go so far as to call themselves
Well, let me just put this up on the screen for you. It says a
in
friendship between the two states has no limits. There are no forbidden areas of cooperation. They also suggested that China would have Russia's back on their decisions with regard to Ukraine, and the same would be true for Russia of China's decisions with regard to Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like an alliance.
5,000 words of that statement and 5,000 words that the two leaders put down on that paper, the word Ukraine does not appear, which suggests that China is not so excited about cheerleading Russia on Ukraine. But there's a more important point here, which is that the United States, the West, the free world, we need to believe in ourselves. We need to have confidence in ourselves. The U.S. and the West collectively comprise more than half the world's GDP. Russia and China comprise less than 20%. We've got innovation. We've got entrepreneurship. We've got immense capacity and human potential. And one thing that President Biden has done over the course of the last year is rally our allies in Europe.
Yeah, they've ruined our military. We have done this. Being programmed. We were programmed to do it. Our police have been destroyed. They feel like everybody hates them. And it took 60 years to make the police look as bad as they actually do, because we make them enforce ridiculous fucking laws that should have never been on the books in the first place, so that it goes citizen against police officer kind of thing. And you either bow down to the governments or forget it. The whole fucking thing, the whole thing was a sham. And now the sham is showing, the veil's been being lifted, and still nobody wants to look. Everywhere I fucking look. And then you listen to guys like this, he's obviously a Democrat. I didn't even look, I don't know who this guy is, but she's asking decent questions about what the hell's going on. Now, if it was all normal and they were not playing positive, negative, black, white, male, female, all the division shit, right? Then he would just come out and tell you the truth. And so would she. She would say, no. They already said, this is the way it's been written in the books this way. This is the end of the United States. We're now going to be known as the divided states of China. That's what we'll be known as. And Russia's not taking the United States. Russia's going to take a bunch of places in Europe. And then China's going to end up taking us. They're going to take us through Canada, most likely, from Canada all the way down. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll see what happens with Brazil and the Southern Americas. But yeah, it's not good, man. It's not fucking good. And everybody keeps trucking along as if it's all, yep, hunky-dory. I mean, they did it, dragged it out as long as they could. They went as slow as they possibly could, and they made sure the programming was very thorough. You know, that nobody was going to go look at what it is. I am trying to show you. This would be the awakening. This would be the time for the awakening. And it can't just be 2 or 3 people. It's got to be fucking millions of people have to now awaken. It's going to get really bad.
Europe,
It's
in
already
Asia, and
really
other
bad.
parts of the world to stand together for a vision in which democracies will win the day over the years ahead, not autocracies. And we feel very good about the fact that we have that kind of strategic alignment and convergence with close friends and partners in the G7, in the Quad, in NATO, with the European Union. And we've already put points on the board, and we are ready for the challenges that lie ahead.
All right, we'll see what those challenges are, and thank you very much. It's good to have you with us today, Jake Sullivan from the White House. Thank you, Jake.
We continue here on the Guy Benson Show. We were just mentioning New York and Texas. Let's go ahead and talk about Florida as well. Because I think we all know that Florida has been in the spotlight politically because the governor of Florida is seen as a political threat. Hence the relentless program.
No, he's not, because the courts are refusing them all. The courts are all refusing their executive orders, and that's going on in West Virginia, and it's going. You change the channel to one of your other Fox channels.
We'll get to here in just a second, but first I want to draw your attention to a new poll out of Florida. This is from USA Today in Suffolk, and they asked Florida voters about the upcoming midterm elections. And let's just say that things aren't looking great for the Democrats in the state of Florida.
How do you know?
President Joe Biden has a 39%
Maybe they'll change the voting.
in Florida, which is about right. We've seen
Doing everything else is going through.
Biden at 39% or so, and Florida is a large, diverse, swing state. So it would make sense that his job approval would be roughly as bad there, maybe a little worse, than it is nationally. Biden's personal favorability rating is underwater by 11 points in the state of Florida. So what about some head-to-heads? Looking at 2022, this election cycle, first of all, on the Senate side, Marco Rubio's up for re-election this year. And they put a woman named Val Demings up against him. And right now, Rubio is ahead by 8 points in that race. 49-41. Maybe they'll tighten. This thing's going to ebb and flow. But Rubio is a very heavy favorite to win re-election. Being up by 8 in Florida is a pretty significant deal. Now, on the governor's side, you've got a few Democrats who would like to be the nominee against Governor DeSantis. You have Charlie Crist, who's the former governor, member of Congress. He ran for Senate and failed. He is this shapeshifter who believes nothing. He has run for statewide office in Florida as a Republican, as an independent, and as a Democrat. And I think for this race, he's got his magic 8 ball, and he shook it up. What am I going to be today? And it's Democrat. So you've got Charlie Crist, or believes absolutely nothing.
Oh, maybe because it's an old one.
Imagine
Maybe it's an old
believing
video.
so little that you run for statewide office under 3 different party labels, depending on what you think your personal ambition might be helped by at any given moment. It's actually almost impressive in terms of its sheer cynicism and selfishness. And he's probably going to get gerrymandered or redistricted out of existence in his House seat. He's currently a Democrat, so now he's going to run for governor. He trails DeSantis by 6 points in this poll. Then you've got Nikki Fried, who is the current agriculture secretary, but she's just sort of like one of these Twitter trolls. She's the one who recently compared Ron DeSantis to Hitler. Said DeSantis reminds her a lot of Hitler. Maybe she and Whoopi Goldberg can go to remedial history class together or something. But that's what she said. She's supposedly like the leading serious candidate on the Democrat side. She believes every conspiracy theory. She amplifies every nonsense attack on Ron DeSantis, even stuff that gets instantly debunked. She was a hype woman for that crazy person, Rebecca Jones. right? The career criminal who's been out there lying constantly about Florida manipulating the data. It's all untrue. It's all been debunked. But because it was being used as a weapon against DeSantis, Nikki Fried recklessly amplified all of it. I don't know if she ever does her day job. Has she ever done anything about agriculture in Florida? It seems like all she does is sit on Twitter and lob insults at Ron DeSantis. How's that going for her? In this poll, it's DeSantis 51, Nikki Fried 40. DeSantis up 11. Ron DeSantis is the only statewide or national figure in the state of Florida that in this poll is above 50% on favorability rating. He's plus 10, 52-42. And as I said, he leads his would-be Democratic opponents by a range of 6 to 11 points. So I tell you this not because it's dispositive, not because polling at this stage really matters a lot, although we are in the election year. Right, these are not good signs for the Democrats. I read you these polling numbers mostly just in case there are any members of the media listening, because I'd like to give them a stab. Because they have tried so hard. I know you guys have tried so hard against Ron. I know. And it has to be really, really sad to see the people of Florida not falling for it. Sorry. But that's what's happening so far. And it brings me great joy. Even as someone who is not necessarily, in every way, shape, or form, a giant Ron DeSantis stan. I like him. I think he's done a good job. I mostly talk about him because of the insane attacks against him. And we'll get to another one here, as I've now teed.
Scam whose house of cards may be falling. Joining me now is Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita, excuse me. Attorney General Rokita, you actually...
Yeah, we heard that already.
A bipartisan group of senators is negotiating legislation that would impose sanctions on Russia to deter the country from invading Ukraine.
That was the idiot we already heard from. Nah, nothing good.
COVID revolt in Canada could be heading to America next.
Already got shut down.
Thousands of truckers are currently protesting the country's strict vaccine mandates, and their organizers say they're looking to take on the U.S. government next.
Somebody's got to fight this great reset, and Brian, I think teamwork with our northern neighbors and us, we got it. Expect it to grow exponentially over the next several days, next couple of weeks. We're looking at launching California to D.C. beginning March 1st. It's coming together. It's coming together very quickly. A lot of public support on the American side.
The huge show of force apparently striking a nerve with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
I have attended protests and rallies in the past.
They already closed it all down. Facebook closed it down, they said, and Twitter, and everybody, it's all being hidden.
Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric.
All right, Jesse, he's decided that he's not going to go anywhere near protests that talk about hateful rhetoric, and he says that they are being violent toward their fellow citizens. Isn't he ginning up more hate? Isn't that how you divide, just the way it's happening in this country?
He looks like he wet his pants. I have not seen any barbarians with tiki torches and pitchforks. These seem like reasonable people that just want to work. And, you know, when Canada gets angry, that's when you got to think, wait a second, maybe we've hit a breaking point here. These people, they're our #1 trading partner.
Yeah.
Bigger than Mexico, bigger than China. If we have a problem with that supply chain where there's ships idling off the coast, imagine we can't get goods and services back and forth the northern border. We're not going to be able to buy anything. And all you need to do as a politician, Judge, and I figured it out, it's really simple. You just have to listen to people. How hard is that? You listen, you say, you can't even fake listen.
Yeah.
Just go, and then you just do basically what they want. Just kind of,
Or at least
in the
say
same range as
advice
what
for
they
marriage.
want. Right, you know what, Greg, you're right about that.
All right, but you know what, Greg? Didn't he go too far when he called those truckers men in tinfoil hats?
Oh, no, Canada should be ashamed of this. Oh, God, I almost said douchebag. I'm not. He's a callow leader. This is a guy who backed the fraudulent BLM from his safe little perch, and then he sells out. Well, he did that to help alleviate his own blackface scandal. That's why he did it. Then he sells out his own citizens. He's not a PM. He's a BM.
Oh.
But anyway, these are not normal activists. That's why you have to... Okay, these are not normal activists. These are not college kids. They're social justice warriors.
These are hard-working.
On the spectrum of social activism, they're the least likely agents of change, which is why you should take them seriously. And I know that the media and the left want to insinuate violence and insurrection-y kind of rhetoric, and they're hoping for it. And they might get it. There might be a freak who does something wrong, but that's what they really want, because it's weird how everything's switched. It's the workers of the world unite, and there are no leftists there to applaud it.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? I'll tell you that their requirements that you have to have a vaccine in order to cross the border, and then you have to quarantine, so and then miss work. I mean, this really is crazy stuff.
It is
You gotta
stupid.
agree. You can't expect a trucker to quarantine. And by the way, this guy ends up.
But look at all the kids
when
in
he got
schools.
the
No parents are saying
Omicron, he
anything.
went into hiding.
Parents are all quiet about it all. Bunch of zombies.
No, he went into hiding. They called him a coward.
I think that, the truckers have their right to protest.
A very
And,
small
it is
portion
so
of
annoying when
the
they
school,
stop traffic and
of the
they
kids at
inflict
schools
misery
are
on
protesting.
innocent third-party
Talking about a
people.
few kids in a state
But
here
my
and a
big
state
problem,
there
if,
that are
the
actually
Prime Minister
standing up
is
to it,
correct,
and they're just going to get shut
there
out,
have
and they're
been,
going to have to
Confederate flags,
go to school at home or whatever they're going to do, but still got to learn all the lies. Still got to learn the school
If the Prime
curriculum.
Minister is correct, and I'm only citing him.
How does he know?
then
Just have to do it from home.
That indicates that there are.
You know, it's not like any
amongst them
laws are
at
getting
least
better,
some
or you're not taking any of them down. This is the way it's going to be. You can tell they're talking. They're talking. Our governments are talking about shit that they're going to do. They got the kids wearing masks for. They want to get them going in preschool and kindergarten, so that by the time they get to 3rd, 4th, 5th grades, they'll be used to wearing the mask, and it'll be easy, and it'll just go nice and smooth. That's what they're saying. So obviously they're planning on it never stopping,
It's a thriller of a Thursday. Look who joined us. Yeah, Brian Kilmeade. He's got a new show on Saturdays. Because
Yeah, I don't want to
apparently
be entertained. I hate being entertained. I hate the fucking news, man. It's all entertainment shit. It's all anyone does. Let's see if Tucker's talking any reality.
So here's something we've noticed. You may have noticed it too. All of a sudden, pretty much every powerful person in the country is talking about something called democracy. Democracy! Our sacred democracy! You hear that word everywhere, from The Atlantic to NPR to the New Yorker Magazine and NBC News in between. Democracy defines the year 2022 the way that Groovy defined 1968. All the cool kids are saying it. Liz Cheney has decided her life's mission is now to defend democracy. Jim Acosta has a new CNN show in which he uses the word democracy the way some people use prepositions, in every sentence. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, there's a Zoom webinar on democracy, which you're welcome to attend in case you haven't heard enough about it already. Every left-of-center midwit on Twitter will be there. All of them will be fretting about the future of democracy. Pretty amusing. It's easy to make fun of an event like that, and of course you have a moral obligation to. David from Bloviate